So today I'm going to be walking through how I made this fully reversible Aladdin and Jafar outfit. All of the patterns are available on my Etsy. I've tried to make everything as beginner friendly as I possibly can. And I think that's everything, so let's get on with the video. So in terms of materials and equipment that you'll need, I'm going to be using a fabric pen to draw out my pattern pieces. I'm going to be using some flat braided elastic. This is optional but will add a little bit of extra support to the top. I'm going to be using some pins and then some fabric scissors to cut out my pattern pieces. I'm also going to be using an overlocker. You can also use just a regular machine with zigzag stitch as well. In terms of fabric, this is all 95% cotton, 5% elastane, and for Jafar I've got red and black, and for Aladdin I've got cream and purple. There's also the bodice that I'm not going to show in this video just because I already have a tutorial for that, but for that I used linen, and I used a brownie kind of colour for Aladdin's side and a red for Jafar. So I'm going to start by making this reversible playsuit. So the pattern that I'm going to use for the playsuit is my Harry pattern. The only difference is that I'm going to cut it to be shorts rather than a full length jumpsuit. So I'm going to go in and cut all of my pieces out, and then I'll show you what I've got in each piece. So these are all the pieces cut out for Jafar's side. So all of these are black, and then the underbust and the top I'm going to be tying over the top of the playsuit are going to have red on them as well. So for Jafar's side, I've got one in the v-neck side, one in the high neck side of the top. I've got 4 pieces for the shorts and 4 pieces for the pockets. If I was using a fabric with a right and wrong side, which this isn't, I would need to make sure that I had 2 in one orientation and 2 in the other orientation for both the pockets and the shorts, and that will be the same case as the Aladdin one as well. So then this is Aladdin's side. So I've got purple for the top and cream for the shorts. So for the top, again, I've just got 1 in the v-neck, 1 in the high neck. I've got 4 pieces for the shorts and 4 pieces for the pockets. So now I'm going to start to put these together. So I'm going to need 2 shorts pieces, 2 pockets, and just 1 of the tops. So I'm going to start with the v-neck side. So starting with the shorts, I want to lay them right sides together. And just pin them in place down this curved edge here. So I've just pinned down this edge, and then I would go in and sew this in place with an overlocker or a zigzag stitch. So imagine I've done that bit, then you would fold this out and then take your top with the right sides facing together and pin that along that top edge. So I've just pinned that top along there, and then again I would go in and sew that in place with my overlocker or a zigzag stitch, and then you can fold that up and then add the pockets. So there is a guide on the pattern that shows you where to attach the top of the pocket, which I forgot to draw in, but I've just gone and done that now. So I'm just going to line up the top edge of this pocket with the mark from the pattern, and then pin this straight edge of the pocket to the straight edge of the shorts, and then repeating that for the other side. And then again, I'm going to go in and sew them with my overlocker or a zigzag stitch. So now I'm going to go in and sew all of those seams that I've mentioned, and then I'm going to go in and repeat all of those steps for my other pieces for the Aladdin side. So it will just be a different neckline on the remaining pieces, and then I'm going to go in and repeat all of that for the Jafar pieces as well. So this is how the Aladdin side looks once everything is sewn together, and like I said, I just went and repeated that for all my remaining pieces. So I also have the same thing for the Jafar side with the v-neck, and then I'm going to take this one and place them so that they are right sides facing together. I'm just going to start to pin together the corresponding edges. So I'm going to pin the armholes together. So that's both of my armholes pinned in place, and I'm going to do the same to this neckline. And then the final place that I'm going to pin is just straight along this bottom edge of the shorts, just leaving open this straight edge. So I'm going to pin along here and then along the other side and just leave this bit open. So I've just finished pinning everything in place. So around the armholes, around the neckline and along this bottom edge, again just leaving this straight edge out. So I'm going to go and sew all of those in place with my overlocker. Again, you can use a zigzag stitch. And then for this top section, so I'm going to come along each armhole and down the neckline, leaving this strap open at the top. And then once I have these seams in place, I'm going to go straight on top of them with some flat braided elastic. So I'm going to sew this around the armhole like that, around the neckline, and then the armhole on the other side. So I'm going to do that after I've already sewn the seams in place, because that will make it a little bit easier. So I'll show you that once I've done that. So this is how that piece looks when everything is sewn together. So I've just sewn along this bottom edge, and then you can see this top edge has got the elastic sewn over the top as well. So I'm gonna go in and repeat all of that with my remaining two pieces as well. And then I'm gonna turn this one to the right side out. So I've got this piece the right way out, and then my higher neck side, I'm going to keep this inside out, and I'm going to place the V-neck side that is the right way out inside the piece with the high neck side. So I'm just going to take this one. You want to make sure that the right fabric is facing the right fabric. So I've got cream facing cream here. I'm just going to start to place them inside each other, matching up all the corresponding edges. So here I'm taking my strap of the V-neck side, I'm placing it up inside the strap of the high neck side and pinning that in place. And then I'm going to do the same with the other strap. I'm just going to keep doing this with all of my edges until everything is lined up. So everything will be completely enclosed inside this high neck one once I'm done. I'm going to finish this off camera and then show you how it looks once everything's pinned together. And at this point I'm pinning through 4 layers of fabric, so that's important. So I've just finished pinning everything in place. I've essentially just pinned every outer edge through all 4 layers of the fabric. So I've pinned down the side of the top, around the pocket and down the side of the skirt. Obviously I've done above the straps as well, just at the very top. And then I've also done just down here where I left open when I was initially sewing at the bottom of the shorts. So I've sewn the 4 layers in place here, down the side of the playsuit and at the top of the straps as well. So I'm going to go in and sew that in place with my overlocker. Again, you can use a zigzag stitch. So I've just finished sewing all of these edges in place. So down the side of the top, around the pocket, down the side of the shorts, along this edge here at the bottom, and then along the straps at the top. So now all I need to do is turn this to the right side out. So I'm just going to unpick a small hole in this seam that attaches the Aladdin side of the shorts to the pocket. Just unpick a small hole here, and then I can use that to pull the whole playsuit through. So I've just got my hole unpicked here. I'm going to use that to gently push the playsuit through to the right side. And as I'm pulling this through, I'm just going to check all the seams that I just sewed, especially around the pockets, because it's quite easy to miss a layer there. I'm just going to check all of those seams before I close up the hole, just in case I need to go in and re-sew anything. It looks like it's fine though. So now the final thing that I need to do is to just close up this hole here. So I'm going to do that with a ladder stitch by hand. So for my ladder stitch, I'm just going to go in to one side of the hole for one stitch, and then back over to the other side for one stitch. And then again back to this side, and then back over to the other side. So I'm going to continue that for the whole length of the hole, and then come back on myself so that there is a double layer and it's more secure, and then I'm going to tie it off at this end. So then once that hole is closed up, the playsuit part of this is finished. So now I'm going to move on to make the top that's going to tie over the front of Jafar's side to kind of give an impression of his cape. So moving on to make the top, I'm going to be using my black and red fabric. The red fabric is going to act as a lining. You could use just one colour for everything with this, and this is again 95% cotton, 5% elastane with a 4-way stretch. So I'm going to be using my Naomi pattern for this top. So you will have a tie front piece, you will have the piece for the back of your top, which is just a regular round neck, and then a piece for the sleeve. So for the sleeve, you're going to need 4 pieces in total. 2 of those will be the lining and 2 will be your base fabric. So for me, I'm going to be doing 2 in black and 2 in red. Again, you can just do them all in one colour if you want to. And to cut this one out, you're going to line this straight edge here up to a fold. So you're going to line the fold up there, draw it in place, and then once you cut it out, you can open up that fold and you will have double the size of this sleeve. So you want 4 of those cut out on a fold. And then for your regular top piece, you're going to want 2 of these cut out. Again, one of those is going to be your lining, so I'm going to have my lining in red again. So just 2 of those that you need. And then for your tie front piece, you need 2 in this orientation and 2 in this orientation. And again, 1 from each orientation will be your lining. So I'm going to cut 2 black out, 1 facing this way and 1 facing this way, and then I'm going to do the same with my red pieces as well. So I'm going to go in and cut all of those pieces out, and then I'll show you how it should look once you have all of your pieces. So I've just finished getting everything cut out. So this is going to be the back of the top. So I've got my base fabric, which is my black, and then this is for the lining fabric in the red. And then for my tie front pieces, I've got 2 in my black, in my base fabric. And as you can see, these are facing in opposite directions. I've got 1 coming this way and 1 coming this way for each side of the top. And then finally, I have my sleeve pieces. So I've got 2 in the black here. And then if I just show you, because this has been cut on a fold here, you can open that out for your full sleeve, and this area here is the area that will go around the armhole of the top. And you can see I've also got my 2 sleeve pieces in the red lining as well, and again you can fold them out for the full sleeve. So I'm going to put all of this to one side, and I'm going to start by working on the back of the top. So I'm just going to start by taking these 2 top pieces and lay them one on top of the other with right sides facing together. And I'm just going to take some pins and pin along this bottom edge and then just around the neckline. So I'm going to go in and sew these 2 edges in place. So just around the neckline and along the bottom edge. I'm going to use my overlocker for that, but you can also use a zigzag stitch. So I've just finished sewing along those edges. So that's my neckline and the bottom of the top, and now I'm going to take some flat braided elastic. This is completely optional, but I would recommend it for a bit of added structure, and I'm literally just going to sew that straight on top of the seam that I just sewed around the neckline and around the bottom edge of the top. So I'm just going to place that seam under the foot with the elastic just resting on top of it, and then I'm just going to follow it round using this finger to guide it as I go. And I'm just gonna trim that off and sew to the end of that seam. So your elastic will look something like this, and then I'm going to repeat that for the bottom edge of the top as well. So this is the back of the top finish. So I've sewn the neckline in place and the bottom of the top and just laid the elastic over the top of them. So now I can move on to the tie front side. Also, I forgot to mention that I decided to put the elastic on the red side because whichever side you put your elastic is the side that is more likely to peek through. So the red is going to peek through to the black side. Obviously, if you're using two colours that are the same, it won't matter. Or if you would rather your lining doesn't peek through to your base fabric, you can put your elastic over the base fabric side. So it's completely up to you. So then moving on to my tie front sides, I'm going to do pretty much exactly the same thing here and pin my two pieces together with the right sides facing together. So I'm going to pin along the top of this tie and along the bottom of this tie. So I'll do that and then be back. So I've just pinned along the straight edge at the top of the tie and the straight edge at the bottom of the tie. And I'm going to go in and sew that in place with an overlocker. You can use a zigzag stitch as well. And then again, I'm going to lay the elastic over the top of that. Obviously, you don't have to do that. It is optional. But again, I would recommend it. So once you've done that, it will look something like this. I'm just going to go and repeat and do that for my other piece. And then I will be turning my tie front sides to the right side out. So I'll have two tie front pieces like this, and then the standard piece for the back will still be inside out. So I'm just going to go and finish my other tie front piece. So now I've got both of my tie front pieces done. You need to make sure that as you're sewing these two pieces together, that you are going to end up with one in each orientation so that you've got one for each side of the top. So it's a lot easier to figure that out when you've got a side of fabric with a right and wrong side. But when you're using a block fabric like this that doesn't, you just need to pay attention and make sure that you are making one for each side. So now I'm going to take these two tie front pieces and place them inside the piece that's going to be for the back, which should still be inside out. And as I'm doing this, I'm going to make sure that the right fabric is facing the right fabric. So my red lining fabric is facing up here, and the red lining fabric for the back of the top is also facing up. So this is going to make sure that they're facing each other. So I'm just going to start to place this inside, just kind of folding the tie front into the middle and out the way. And then I'm just lining up these straps at the very top. I'm going to pin them in place. And then I'm also going to pin along this side as well. And then I'm just going to repeat that for the other piece as well. So now I'm going to go in with my overlocker and sew along this top edge and down the sides. So you'll be sewing through 4 layers of fabric for each of these seams. You can also use a zigzag stitch. So I've just sewn down all of these edges, and I'm going to turn this to the right side out. I can just do that through the armholes that are still open. And then it should look something like this at the moment. So that's actually the lining. So it will be like this. And now I'm going to put this piece to one side while I make these sleeves. So for each of your sleeve pieces, both the lining and the base fabric, there is a straight line here, from here to here. I'm just going to pin that in place. Obviously I have just kept these sleeve pieces folded in half as they're supposed to be. And I'm just going to sew down this straight edge, so literally just the bit that's straight. So it's going to be from here to here, and I'm going to do that for all 4 of my sleeve pieces. So now that I've sewn along those edges, I'm just going to take one in my base fabric and one in my lining. I'm going to turn the lining to the right side out so that it looks like this, and then I'm going to place this lining piece inside the base fabric. So because I've turned the lining to the right side out, I'm now going to have right sides facing together with the base fabric. So I'm just going to place that up inside, just matching up this seam on both pieces. I'm going to place my first pin just at the bottom of that seam, just to keep things in place. And now I'm just going to go around and pin this curved edge together. So I'm going to pin the black to the red all the way along this bottom edge. I'm going to leave this edge at the top open and just around here. So now that's all pinned in place, I'm going to follow that edge around with my overlocker. Again, you can use a zigzag stitch. It is probably easier to do this bit with a zigzag stitch just because there are a lot of curves and a lot of tight corners. So you can use whichever one you want, but probably a zigzag will be easier for this bit. So this is how that will look once it's sewn together. And I'm going to use the armhole to turn this to the right side out. So at this point you can decide to leave your sleeve as it is. I'm going to follow around this edge that I just sewed with a top stitch. So I'm literally just going to sew right along this seam that I just sewed with a zigzag stitch, and I'm going to do that on both of my sleeves. So I'm just following this seam round like so, and I have red thread threaded through the top and then black thread in the bobbin, which means it comes out looking like this on the black side, which I think is quite a nice detail. So if you want some kind of pattern, this can be a good way to do it. And then I'm just going to continue to follow this round just with the medium size of my zigzag stitch. So I've just finished adding that top stitch, so my sleeve looks like this. And I've repeated all of those steps for my second sleeve pieces as well. So now all that I've got left to do is to attach it to my top piece. So taking my top, and this is the right way out, obviously you can see the lining is on the inside. I'm going to take my sleeve, move that to one side for a second, and I've just folded it along where the initial seam was that I sewed in place here along that straight edge. And while it's folded, I'm just going to put a pin on the fold so that I can use that as a guide. So you can see here I've got this straight seam here, and then I've just placed a pin at this seam. So that's going to help us line the sleeve to the armhole. So I'm going to take this sleeve and turn it so that the lining is facing out, and then I'm going to place it over that armhole. So this edge is the one edge of the sleeve that I left like completely raw and open, and I'm just going to line up this seam here, which is the first seam along that straight edge that I sewed, and I'll line that up with the seam at the top of the straps for the top. I'm going to place a pin keep that in place. And then this pin that I placed on the fold of the sleeve to act as a guide, I'm going to match that up with the seam of the side of the top. So the side seam of the top with that pin, and I'm going to pin that in place. So now that you've got those two important bits pinned in place, I'm just going to pin the rest of the sleeve around this armhole. So that is your sleeve pinned in place. You want to make sure that you've been pinning through 4 layers of fabric, and then once you fold it out, it will look something like this. So that's a good way to check that you've done it in the right way. So you should be able to see that this seam, which is the first seam that you sewed on the sleeve, matches up with the seam at the straps of the top. So I'm going to fold that back, and then I'm just going to go and sew this in place with my overlocker, or you can use a zigzag stitch as well. So I've just sewn around that sleeve, and then if I fold it out, you can see how the sleeve is supposed to look. Just fold this out as well. So that's your tie front piece, and then there's your sleeve, and then obviously you've got to add your sleeve on the other side, which I would do off camera, but I'm going to walk through it again because I know it's not the clearest thing to see. So just taking my other sleeve piece and folding it down that straight edge that I sewed at first. I'm just going to put my pin in that fold as my guide. And now looking at the sleeve here might be a bit easier for me to talk through what's going to match up. So this straight edge is going to match up to this straight edge at the top of your strap. So this straight edge is going to line up to this straight edge here, and this armhole is going to sew around this hole here. So hopefully that's a little bit easier to visualize. So I'm going to turn this sleeve so that the lining is facing out again, and then holding it so that this raw edge is facing away from the armhole that you're placing it onto. I'm just going to take this armhole and place it inside the sleeve and line up the straight edge of the sleeve with the straight edge of the strap. And then again, I'm going to find this seam here, which is the side seam of the top, and I'm going to line that up with my pin. And then I'm going to go in and fill in all the gaps. So that's all sewn in place. Now I'm going to fold it out just to check that it is sewn correctly. You can see that the top of the strap is lined up with the straight line of the sleeve. I'm going to go and sew that in place. So now I've got both of my sleeves in place, and I can go and try everything on together. So the only piece left to make now would be this reversible underbust, but like I said, I have made mine off camera just because I already have a tutorial of this in my Esmeralda video. So I'll link that on the screen and down below if you want to go and finish that.